January 11th, 1944. 25,000 feet above Oschersleben, Germany. Major James H. Howard's North American P-51 Mustang fighter sliced through air so cold it could freeze a man's breath in seconds. Below him, 300 Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bombers stretched across the sky in tight combat box formations. Howard scanned the horizon through his canopy, searching for the enemy fighters he knew were coming. But this morning's mission would become something else entirely. Something military historians would later call the greatest single fighter pilot action of World War II. The man flying that Mustang had once been rejected. In 1941, James Howard applied to join the United States Army Air Corps. He wanted to fly fighters, to defend his country, to prove himself in the sky. The Air Corps turned him down. Too old, they said. He was 27. Not enough college education. Wrong profile for what they needed. Howard refused to accept rejection. If America wouldn't let him fly, he'd find someone who would. He joined the American volunteer group, the legendary Flying Tigers, and shipped out to China to fight the Japanese. Flying the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk fighter in the skies over Burma and China, Howard learned combat the hard way. He scored 6 confirmed kills against Japanese fighters, proving he had the skill and nerve the Air Corps claimed he lacked. When the Flying Tigers disbanded in 1942, Howard finally wore an American uniform, but he never forgot the rejection. Captain Edward Giller, 356th Fighter Group, remembered Howard's arrival in England. He was quiet, older than most of us, carried himself different. You could tell he'd seen real combat. Most of us were kids fresh from training. Howard was a veteran before he even got to Europe. By January 1944, Howard commanded a flight in the 54th Fighter Squadron. He traded his P-40 for the P-51 Mustang, America's finest fighter, 6 Browning AN/M 250 caliber machine guns, approximately 400 rounds per gun, range that could escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back, speed exceeding 400 miles per hour. But specifications on paper meant nothing without a pilot who knew how to use them. Howard knew. The mission briefing that morning was routine, at least by the brutal standards of January 1944. Escort the 8th Air Force bombers to Oscherslieben's aircraft factories. Protect them from German fighters during the bomb run. Bring them home? Howard suited up in silence. Flight suit, parachute harness, Mae West life preserver, leather jacket. Everything had to be perfect, because mistakes at 25,000 feet meant death. 56 Mustangs taxied to the runway in sequence. One by one they roared down the strip and lifted into the gray English sky. Howard's wingmen formed up on him, young pilots who trusted him because he'd survived what most didn't. The formation climbed through clouds, breaking into brilliant sunlight above the overcast. Fuel, full tanks. Ammunition, 2,400 rounds total. Oxygen, flowing normally. Everything was ready. The bomber stream stretched for miles, an aerial armada of flying fortresses carrying the war deep into Hitler's Reich. Howard's squadron took position above and behind the bombers. From here they could dive on any German fighters attempting to attack. Radio chatter was minimal. Pilots scanning constantly, looking for the enemy that was certainly looking for them. The rejected applicant, who had proven himself in China, was about to face his greatest test. And somewhere ahead, 30 German fighters were preparing to turn this into the bloodiest day of the air war. 0500 hours. Oxted Airfield, England. The briefing room filled with cigarette smoke and nervous energy as 56 fighter pilots crowded around the mission map. Red string traced the road from England to Oschersleben and back, over 400 miles deep into Germany. Major Don Blakesley, 356th Fighter Group commander, stood before the map. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact, delivering information that would determine who lived and who died. Gentlemen, today's target is the Focke-Wulf aircraft plant at Oschersleben. 300 B-17s from the 1st and 3rd Bomb Divisions. They'll hit the factories producing Fu-190 fighters. Our job is to get them there and bring them home. The intelligence officer stepped forward with the bad news. Expect heavy fighter opposition. Luftwaffe has concentrated Jagdgeschwader 2, 3, and 11 in the area. Estimate 100-plus German fighters available. Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf FWI 190, primarily. Howard listened in silence, writing notes on his kneeboard. Times, altitudes, radio frequencies, recognition codes. Weather officer, cloud layer at 8,000 feet over the channel, clear over the target. Temperature at altitude, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds from the west at 60 miles per hour. Blakesley continued, "We'll provide close escort. Stay with the bombers. Don't chase individual bandits if it means leaving the heavies unprotected. The bomber boys are counting on us." Lieutenant Robert Johnson, who would become one of America's top aces, remembered the briefing. Howard sat in the back, didn't say much, but when Blakesley talked about staying with the bombers no matter what, I saw Howard nod. Like he'd already made that decision before the briefing even started. The pilots synchronized watches. 06:15, engine start. 06:30 takeoff. 07:45, rendezvous with bomber stream over the North Sea. 0900, target area. Howard checked his plotting board one final time. Fuel calculations, timing, emergency procedures, everything mapped and memorized. "One more thing," Blakesley said as pilots stood to leave. "Intelligence reports the Luftwaffe is trying new pack tactics, multiple fighters attacking from different angles simultaneously. They're trying to overwhelm our escort. Stay alert. Stay together." The pilots filed out into the cold January darkness. Ground crews already warming engines. The smell of high-octane aviation fuel mixing with morning mist. Howard walked to his Mustang in silence. His crew chief, Sergeant Mike Ledig, waited by the wing. "Oh, she's ready, Major. Full fuel, full ammo, everything checked twice. Bring her back in one piece." Howard nodded. "That's the plan, Sergeant." He climbed onto the wing, settled into the cockpit, the familiar routine calming his nerves. Straps tight, oxygen mask connected, gun sight on, radio check. Around him, 55 other Mustangs prepared for the same mission. But only one would face what was coming. Howard pressed the starter. The Merlin engine coughed, caught, roared to life. Instruments came alive. Oil pressure rising, temperatures climbing into the green. He looked east toward the darkness where Germany waited. In 3 hours he would be alone against 30 fighters. But right now he was just another pilot doing his job. The control tower flashed green. Time to go to war. 0900 hours. The German border. The bomber stream crossed into enemy airspace in tight formation. 300 flying fortresses arranged in staggered combat boxes. Each box designed for overlapping defensive fire from 50 caliber machine guns. Howard's flight held position 3,000 feet above the lead bomber group. Perfect for diving on attacking fighters. Perfect for seeing everything. Then the radio crackled. "Bandits! 12 o'clock high. Coming down." Howard snapped his head forward. Black dots against the winter sky, growing larger, falling like hawks on prey. Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters, their yellow engine cowlings marking them as veterans of Jagdgeschwader 3. Behind them, more dots appeared. Then more. Technical Sergeant Bill Fleming, ball turret gunner on a B-17 named Careful Virgin. Watch them come. I counted 30 fighters minimum. Maybe more. They came in coordinated, some high, some level, some from below. Classic wolf pack. We knew we were in for it. The German fighters split into swarm formations. 4 ship elements attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. Exactly what the briefing had warned. American escort squadrons reacted instantly. Mustangs peeling off to intercept, diving into the furball developing around the bomber stream. Radio discipline collapsed into chaos. "Break left. On your 6. God 1. I'm hit. Within seconds, the neat formations dissolved into individual dogfights scattered across 20 miles of sky. Howard's wingmen engaged German fighters attacking from above, rolling into steep dives, following the enemy down. Standard tactic: protect the bombers by killing the attackers. But Howard saw something else. While American fighters chased the high attackers, more German fighters were setting up below the bombers, positioning for belly attacks where the flying fortresses had minimal defensive fire. The classic bait and switch. Draw off the escorts with one group, attack with another. Howard keyed his radio. Homing Blue Flight, this is Blue Leader. Stay high. More bandits coming up from below. Static. His wingmen were already committed, diving after the first wave. Gone. Howard looked down at the bomber formation. 300 bombers carrying 3,000 American boys, already taking fire from German fighters slashing through the formation. He looked at his fuel gauge. Enough to fight for maybe 20 minutes and still make it home. He looked at his ammunition counter. 2,400 rounds. Approximately 20 seconds of continuous fire. He looked at the German fighters below, counted them visually. 20. 25. 30 at least. And he was alone. Every tactical doctrine said call for help. Wait for your flight to reform. Don't engage when outnumbered. But doctrine didn't account for 300 bombers losing their escort. Howard made his decision in 2 seconds. He pushed the stick forward. The Mustang's nose dropped, diving toward the wolf pack. Alone. Captain Ralph Johnson, pilot of B-17 Dry Martini IV, watched a single Mustang dive into the German formation. I thought he was crazy. One fighter against 30. We figured we were watching a suicide run. Brave, but suicide. Howard's airspeed indicator climbed. 300 miles per hour. 350. 400. He selected his first target. An FW-190 lining up on a bomber's tail. Yellow spinner. Black crosses on the wings. Howard centered the gun sight. Thumb on the trigger. 650 caliber machine guns roared. The greatest solo fighter action in aviation history had begun. Howard's guns hammered. Tracers arced across the sky. The Focke-Wulf 190 exploded in a ball of fire. The German pilot never saw him coming. But the other 29 did. Howard didn't slow down, didn't celebrate. Rolled hard right and pulled into a climbing turn, already looking for the next target. 2 Bf-109s broke toward him. Head-on pass. Closing speed over 700 miles per hour. Most pilots would break off. Self-preservation overriding aggression. Howard held steady, aimed, fired. His tracers walked into the lead Messerschmitt. Pieces flew off the cowling. Smoke streamed. The German fighter rolled inverted and dove away, trailing fire. The second Bf-109 broke hard left. Survival instinct winning. Howard had learned something critical in that first minute. The Germans thought there were multiple American fighters. His aggressive head-on attacks. His positioning between different groups. His constant movement. It created the illusion of numbers. Luftwaffe Lieutenant Franz Stigler, flying with Jagdgeschwader 27 that day, later recalled, "We reported multiple Mustangs attacking from different vectors. The coordination seemed impossible for one pilot. He was everywhere. We thought we faced a full flight at minimum." Howard exploited their confusion mercilessly. He never stayed in one place, never committed to a prolonged dogfight. Attack, break, reposition, attack again. A Bf-109 lined up on a B-17's tail. Howard dove from above. Fired a 2-second burst, missed, but the German pilot saw the tracers, broke off his attack. Survival over mission. That was the key. Howard didn't need to kill them all. He just needed to disrupt their attacks, make them defensive, make them think twice. Staff Sergeant Robert Godfrey, waist gunner on Hell's Angels, watched the lone Mustang. He'd come screaming through our formation, guns blazing. Germans would scatter like pigeons. Then he'd be gone, climbing back up, diving on another group. We couldn't believe one guy was doing this. But Howard's ammunition was bleeding away. 2,400 rounds sounds like plenty, but 6 guns at 800 rounds per minute consumes ammunition terrifyingly fast. 2-second burst, 80 rounds gone. 3-second burst, 120 rounds. Howard checked his counter after his 5th engagement. Less than half remaining, and the German fighters weren't leaving. They regrouped, reformed, pressed attacks with renewed coordination. An FW-190 made a beam attack on a bomber. Howard intercepted, fired. Saw strikes on the wing route. The Focke-Wulf rolled away smoking. Another kill. Another 100 rounds gone. His fuel gauge showed critically low. 20 minutes of combat had burned through his reserves. He had maybe 15 minutes left before he had to turn for home, or run out of fuel over Germany. Then his guns went silent. Howard pressed the trigger. Nothing. Pressed again. Still nothing. The ammunition counter, 0. He was out. Completely dry. 2,400 rounds expended in 20 minutes of combat. The tactical equation changed instantly. He had no weapons. Low fuel. 30 German fighters still swarming the bombers. Every regulation said leave. RTB returned to base. Mission complete. He'd done more than anyone could expect. Lieutenant Colonel James Stewart, mission commander in the lead B-17, watched the Mustang's gun flashes stop. We thought he was out. Hit or mechanical failure. We figured he'd head home. Any sane pilot would. Howard looked at the bombers below. Still 10 minutes from target. Still under attack. Still bleeding. He pushed the throttle forward and dove back into the fight. Without a single bullet. Howard had become a ghost with teeth. Or rather, a ghost pretending to have teeth. He dove on a Bf-109, setting up an attack run, lined up behind it. Got close enough the German pilot could see him in his mirror. The Messerschmitt broke hard right, diving away from an attack that never came, because Howard had nothing to shoot. But the German didn't know that. Technical Sergeant Charles Johnson, top turret gunner on Jersey Bounce, watched in disbelief that Mustang kept attacking, diving on crowds, getting on their tails. They'd break off every time.